Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you come back for the next episode covering the points of this conversation.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @PrestigiouSPod.
Follow me, Mr. Kent, at Mr. Chris R. Kent.
Follow me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official.
Join our Discord for exclusive content and personal interactions.
And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, on one of my social media platforms, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousInitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean, and here with me is Chris Kent. Hello, Mr. Kent.
Hello, sir.
Today, we have a special guest joining us today. We have Carter Hughes, a national subject matter expert in workforce development and veterans benefit. Carter's here to share his journey, insights, and how to design your life framework based on biblical principles. Welcome, Carter. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How you
Doing great.
guys
Doing great.
doing?
So, Carter, can we start by hearing a little bit about your background? Can you share a little bit with our listeners about yourself and what inspired you to embark on this journey of self-discovery and personal development?
Uh, uh, well, you I'm a child of three, middle child of three, the older brother, younger sister. My dad is military, and my mom is in the education space. She was a teacher. I would say, something that you may or may not know about. I was able to increase my revenue by 5 times, and increase my net worth by 14 times over a 3-year period in my life. I've been able to contribute to federal regulatory guidance that has to be adhered to by over 300 million people. There's a point where I went to Africa for 10 days, just for kind of like a dream, hoping to make some kind of connection. And then when I came back 10 days later, I had a business interest in a fashion and materials company. So I've been blessed to kind of do some exciting things. And what you also may or may not know about me is that I was kicked out of college at 18 years old. By the time I was 35 years old, I was making $35,000 a year, had 2 children, and was living with my parents, right? So for me, this has been a journey, a long kind of, things kind of went south. My mother, or the mother of my children, came to me, and it just, where we were at life at that point was not acceptable. So she decided it was time for her to leave, time to, try something different and try to create a better life, for the kids and everything. So for me, it was kind of that embarrassment, that disappointment around that time is where I, kind of started looking for hope. Luckily, I bumped into the words of Zig Ziglar, and that kind of started everything for me as far as simplifying my life, simplifying my purpose. And then really, I think probably 2 of the biggest things that I did was kind of define who I am and then decide where I'm going in life, right? And that's kind of what started everything for me. Late bloomer, I didn't really start to get it together until I was like a super adult child mix, right, at 35 years old. But I ultimately did get it together, and that's what kind of led me to, the clarity of purpose that I have now, and that's just to help people, in simple form, using my words to help people, right? And once I was able to kind of get to that point, everything else kind of builds from there. But that's where it starts for me personally, using my words to help people, because that was my gift that I was given, an interest in words and ability to comprehend and understand things maybe a little quicker than most. So just using that to help other people, who have gifts that are different than mine, oftentimes a lot more brilliant, more fascinating than mine, but just kind of finding my way to help, to kind of keep this thing going. And that was really, so it was really that embarrassment that kind of compelled me to start, learning more. And that's what really kind of got me on this path, where I am now and being able to contribute to other people like I do.
Very good. Yeah, it seems like life has a way of really giving us lots of ups and downs and tops and turns, and if we don't know what to do with those can be roadblocks. And you were dealt a tough hand, but you came out of it the other side and used that as a challenge to learn and grow, as opposed to something that would shrink you and crumble you to move forward.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree. I did a little shrinking and crumbling as well, but ultimately we got through it. So that's exactly correct.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned how to design your life framework, which is based on biblical principles. And I'm wondering, can you share the core principles behind this framework and how it can help individuals identify their talents and purpose?
Of course. So it's really kind of just based on the Adam and Eve story, the parable of the talents, which is Matthew 25:14. And then the third one is just kind of Mark 12:31, love your neighbor as you love yourself, which is kind of the service piece to all of it. Uh, so with the Adam and Eve, is really just accountability, gratitude, right? Reminding ourselves that those are two things we can use to kind of evaluate our behavior on a weekly basis, daily basis, whatever the case, right? Have I been showing accountability? And we look at that as just acknowledging that we're part of a group, right? Whatever you're doing, you're setting an example. Someone's watching. None of us got here by ourselves, right? So we come into this thing connected to a group of other people. So really just kind of leaning into that and just kind of reminding ourselves. It's difficult to be honest at times, yes, without a doubt. But that also allows folks around you to make the most accurate, form of action, take the most accurate behavior because they're operating with accurate information, right? When you're giving them inaccurate information, it makes things a lot tougher for the group as a whole. And then with the gratitude piece, we really look at that as just doing your best with what you have, with whatever it is you've been given, doing your best with it. It's not gratitude to a person or to a thing. It's more so to life, right? For what you've been given and just being kind of willing to make the most of whatever it is that you have. As we get into this space of like speakers and all this, you hear a lot of stories about incredible people, even in my own life, just seeing incredible people who have limitations and who've overcome it. So just kind of keeping that in mind as well in terms of that gratitude piece. So that's really the accountability and gratitude that we get from the story of Adam and Eve. And then when we talk about the parable of the talents, that's pretty much simplified as either use your talents or lose your talents, right? That's kind of the message, reminding people to refine themselves, improve your gifts, right? We see a lot of cases where folks are given a gift, but they're don't really have the courage to lean into it and to develop it and learn and to go through the tough stuff to get better at whatever that gift is, right? So that's another reminder that we just kind of put out there: use your talent or lose your talent. Trying to compel people, trying to motivate them. Like if you don't use it, you could lose it, right? Like if you're not reading, your brain's not getting stronger. As you get older, your brain's weaker. Now you're at a disadvantage when you're in this kind of fast-paced environment where you need to make decisions. So that's a big one. The law of use is kind of what that's based on. And then the loving yourself as you love your neighbor, that also comes back to accountability, right? Us naturally being a part of a group. Things are meaningless if they're done alone, right? Like the only reason that our gifts matter is because we can use them to help other people. So just kind of acknowledging that fact of it all, and just kind of reiterating once again, just simple concepts, just kind of reminding ourselves as we go out into life, as things become more and more overwhelming. We think it's important to have simple anchors to kind of keep you centered as you go through this thing. And then Philippians chapter 4, verse 4, which kind of encompasses four things you really focus on: the accountability, the gratitude, courage also, right? Like the courage to be authentically you, the courage to grow, right? Like we're meant to grow. We're meant to get bigger and learn more and be more helpful. And then discipline as well is the fourth piece of it. So that courage, discipline, accountability, and gratitude, those four are once again just things we use to evaluate our behavior, right? Like nobody's going to be perfect, but it is important to be clear about what we're striving for, right? We're striving to be courageous. We're striving to set examples of accountability. We're striving to set examples of gratitude. And then most importantly, the the most challenging one for me personally is the discipline, right? Like knowing that what you need to do, knowing that it would be best if I did this. And I think all these things would kind of be just a lifelong struggle once again, and kind of know what we're aiming for, and that's kind of the thinking behind it.
Wow, all right. I got lots of different avenues I want to approach this from. Let's see. Um, all right. So you took the biblical principles and apply that to create a life building framework. Now, I'm intrigued because where so how did those things coalesce into your framework?
I mean, I don't really know how it happened. It's just one of those things. All the things that I was listening to ultimately culminated in me reading, going back to the Bible, right? And then the way that it was being Myron Golden is who I was listening to at the time, and the way that he was interpreting it. Because my whole life I didn't understand that the Bible could actually be useful, right? Like, and if you can understand it and kind of comprehend what was going on, you can take some simple lessons out of there that could be very helpful. And that started with Jim Rohn before Myron Golden. Jim Rohn talks about the parable of the talents, right? That was the first one that really got me like, this is a great story, right? And a story is a good way to teach lessons and things. But the lesson in there of using your talents, right? And then if you don't, there's a penalty for it. So then it's like, how can I kind of simplify this into a digestible way that people can actually take it and use it? And then once I got to Philippians chapter 4, verse 4 is kind of the one that speaks to courage, discipline, accountability, gratitude. And so I'm like, these four things. And I just kind of thought that, man, these four things can kind of be really helpful in terms of like a filter for your behavior. And different spots in the Bible came back to one of those four things, right? Like with the Adam and Eve, the accountability. When he came, Adam, did you eat the fruit? He's like, oh no, it wasn't me, it was her. She gave it. The lack of accountability, right? Which is the thing that we all kind of struggle with. And the more I read this book, it's like, man, these are just stories of people with different kind of lessons in there. Uh, and that's just me trying to find the useful. I think I kind of do this with everything, trying to find the usefulness in it. How can this be useful to people? Because I think all this stuff is here to help us, right? So it's just about being creative enough to kind of figure out how can this help us. And so with this book, that's kind of where it started with Jim Rohn with the parable of the talents, seeing that was very useful, and then actually reading the book and the Adam and Eve story. Even, I mean, you talk like the levels of work that's in the chapter Genesis, the book of Genesis, right at the beginning. The fact that we should be creative. The first words in the Bible, God created, right? Like he's showing you that he creates things and we're made in his image, like the importance of just being creative as a human. All the stuff we see around us, that cup you're holding, that was in somebody's mind first, right? And then they made it, had the courage to bring it out. So just kind of being fascinated by these simple things in life, I think is what it really is. And from there, how can I use this and create something, once again, with my words to help people? And that's where I was able to boil it down to kind of those four things that are, once again, Philippians chapter 4, verse 4, where they kind of call out those four things: accountability, discipline, gratitude, and courage. So I don't really know how I got here, but it's from just kind of listening to folks who are more advanced than me that led me to the Bible, and then operating on that premise of how can I make something to help people. This is kind of where I ended up.
Well, I can say that from your explanation of that is, I think it would be wildly helpful. And, I think that those four principles, like you said, the accountability, the discipline, the gratitude, and courage, those
Courage.
are things that are abundant in need and everybody, right? And you talked about accountability as
Agree.
far as the Adam and Eve story about not telling people kind of what you're capable of doing or what you're not capable of doing, rather is really the way that we interact with that nowadays. And that really can get you into some hot water, because lots of times nowadays at work, you feel sort of pressured to say, yeah, I can do that, even though you don't necessarily know how to do that. And you're thinking, I'll just figure it
Yeah.
out as you go. And then you get there and you're, oh man, I have no idea how to do this. And you do it wrong. And it's because you didn't speak up ahead of time to say, hey, I don't
Mm-hmm.
actually know how to do this, and ask for help. And that is happens all the time. And so you're right. Those
Mm-hmm.
stories in the Bible are just about people. And people, we have people now. We are people. And so trying to figure out, to interpret what the underlying stories are and how we can apply
Mm-hmm.
that to our lives in a creative way is a challenge, but one that I think that you have undertaken with great expertise and done well at.
That's a great explanation, man. Thank you. That was really good. Yeah, that's good explanation. Yes, exactly. Though that is exactly what it is. Exactly, 1000%. We're doing these things every day, and these little reminders can be very helpful, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now, you talked about the parable of the talents, and the parable of talents is really interesting. And especially as it relates to talents today, and if you don't use it, you're going to lose it, which is of course true, because you fall out of practice. You don't do that anymore. You may have passion for it, you may like to do it, but you're not good at it anymore. Which, if you're not good at it, then
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to do it, and you don't have passion to do it anymore. So there's a cycle there. But what is interesting is it seems like kids, when we're young, when we're children, we have all kinds of talents, all kinds of passions, but those get squashed out of us by the time we reach adulthood, because we're not told that those things that we find value in doing, those things that we are talented in doing, are something that we can make money at later on. And because that money part isn't there, okay, well, you can't do that anymore. Let's put the toys and crayons away, and you got to move on and do adult things now. Which is part of that. I mean, you do have to do that, but because we squash out those talents at such an early age, have you found in your work with adults that later on it's tough for them to figure out what their talents actually are? And if so, what do you do to navigate that?
I mean, of course, life does a number on people, unfortunately. And like you said, the child is probably the purest form of the human that you'll see. And the child is just bubbling, overflowing with all kinds of talents and skills. I went to see my mom one day, and she's like, hey, look at this video. And there was a kid who was in the kitchen, and the kid wanted to get, I guess, a box of cereal or something on top of the refrigerator. So the kid like climbed up there, right? He climbed up the fridge, got the box of cereal, and climbed down, no problem, right? And this kid is like maybe 1 or 2 years old at this point. Like a cat, right? The agility of a cat just hopping up. It was amazing to watch. But then that made me say to my mom, like, how heartbreaking is that this same kid probably won't be able to look you in your eye and have a conversation with you when they're 16, 18 years old, right? This same bubbling, right, like a wealth of just creativity and bodily kinesthetic intelligence, all of it. So it really speaks to, like you said, what the world does to people, right? How the world kind of unfortunately smashes those dreams, and kind of, the importance of us now reminding ourselves and our children that you have to protect your dream. You have to protect those passions that you have, those natural passions. And that's another one of the reasons why the reminders can be valuable, because it's something that we each can relate to, and it's just, unfortunately, I know for a lot of us, we just got bad perspectives growing up, right? Because even with the money piece, they're saying, hey, these toys don't make any money. Are we sure about that? Toys will always be $1 billion industry. Like, what are we talking about? Like, let's be honest. Even the things that the kids are doing now, all that stuff has grown into industries, right? Like, even this content creation, right? I used to see my son watching people do stuff, and I'm like, what are you doing? He was preparing for the future, right? And now I try to encourage them to get on the other side, be the person doing the talking, because this world is going to continue to evolve based off the children's ideas, right? Like the kids are, I mean, they're incredible. The child human will always be incredible. So I think it's really on us as adults to really kind of slow down and take a second look. Like, maybe there is some value in this, right? Like, If my son wants to play video games, okay, what about competing? What about getting in one of these leagues, right? Just kind of trying to meet you where you are and then understand that this world is changing so fast. Whatever you're doing is probably operating within a million or $1 billion industry at this point, you know? So my daughter was making slime, and I'm like, okay, we need to turn this into a business so you can, once again, use your gifts to help other people, right? She started doing it, and she enjoyed it, but you know, it's tough with the kids and the work of even the cool stuff. Like there's work associated with it. There is a work to all of this. Even when you see these content creator guys, they're like, oh man, they got so many views on it. I'm like, you just don't know how many hours these people put. Like there's no avoiding the work of it all. So I think that's still kind of the child to adult kind of wisdom that needs to be merged with the child's abilities. But yeah, I think it kind of starts with slowing down and taking a second look at whatever the child is doing and understanding that maybe it can be helpful, maybe it can be profitable, right? Kind of taking those limitations off that we kind of that our parents had and doing something different this time. You're looking at the kids different. There's opportunities all over the place to make money nowadays. So it's like, I don't know if that's a good excuse anymore. It's like, hey, if the stuff that you're doing is liked by other people, why not explore it, right? If you're solving some kind of problem or serving some kind of need, why not explore it, man? Especially with the way society is now, you don't want to limit your creativity because you never know what's coming. And this thing is changing at a rapid pace. So, yeah, I think that's definitely important, though, to kind of slow down and evaluate what the kids are doing and then saying maybe this could be something that's profitable as opposed to the old way we were looking at things.
Well, I think you're exactly right too, because of course, when we were kids, we were told, oh no, you can't do that because that's not gonna, you can't make a job doing that. Not that money is everything, but you do it at some point. You have to make money to put a roof over your head.
Of course.
And of course, you want to have a job that you find fulfilling, so that you can continue doing it. You find value in doing that thing. You get fulfilled from that.
Mm-hmm.
You have your passion is there, and I think that, like okay, so you mentioned that the kind of the social landscape that we live in nowadays is different, because what we, as adults now, I'm 35, is what we grew up as being told that, oh, we can't do that. Our kids are doing wildly different things, and that's a job now. That like content creation is a full-time job. Of course, you have to go through, I'm sure, years of no to low views in order for that to pay off on the other end. But that is something that people are factually doing, that is not something that even was remotely capable of doing years before. And I think that trying to foster those things in the youth is wildly important, so that they understand that, hey, this is something that I might want to do. And I heard a story about a school, and it was a grade school all the way through high school, and the way that they did school was wildly different. I thought it was really, really interesting. And at one point, okay, so they came in at the young age, and the older kids actually came in and helped the younger kids out. They would help to talk to them, to teach them different things. And by doing that, of course, they're learning to further their skills on that information. And as they moved into the teenage years, 12, 13, 14, they had an idea of something that they might want to do when they get out of school. And so what they did was they went and shadowed that person. So if somebody wanted to be a lawyer, they would go to a law firm and say, hey, can I shadow so-and-so around? And of course, maybe they get turned down a bunch of times because they're just a kid, but eventually somebody says yes, and they stay there. They like doing that. So then they do that 3-4 years, and then they go to college for that, and then they're still shadowing. Of course, by the time that's, they're able to actually get a job there, boom, they're hired, no problem, because they've already been there. They're doing it. And then what that does for them, that gives them an opportunity to kind of experience the quote unquote real worldness of that environment, of that work life. Oh, is this something that I actually like? Yes. Okay, great. I'm going to keep doing it. Or no, I'm not going to do it. And I heard that, and I thought that was, wow, that's really interesting. And I kind of reflected a little bit. So a little bit of backstory, just so you know, we're martial arts instructors. I started doing martial arts when I was 11, and I started helping with classes and then teaching classes. I was a paid instructor at 14 years old. I got a work permit from school, and that's my first and only job I've ever really had. And thinking through the process that those kids are going through in that school, I'm like, okay, that's really cool, and I like that. And I was like, okay, why do I? It's because I did that. I got something that I was passionate about. I got in early on when I was young. I was doing it, and I liked doing it, so that I kept doing it. I got paid to do it. Now I'm the manager, head instructor, the organizer of the school. All because I've been there. I was able to do that, and I get to do what I like to do because I found it and I kept doing it. But that is not the standard, job journey that people are on. And I think that
Hmm.
if people could find their passions, find their talents, double down on those, use those as opposed to lose them, like you say, and then continue on and make that your your job, your mission as you continue, that'd be wildly helpful.
Agree. Agree. We need to see more stuff like that, in society, like you said, giving them that space to kind of cultivate whatever their interests are and letting them, like you said, explore it. That shadowing for a year, that's an incredible experience because they get to see things up close. Is this something I like? Is this something I don't like? Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
kind of trying to get my son and my daughter into that now, like trying to get them into that mindset and finding opportunities for them to kind of get some of those experiences. So, yeah, very valuable. Very valuable. Because I know for my daughter, she had this girl she went to school with who was the bug girl, right? And I was already started kind of learning about these things at that point. Uh, so I'm like, she's an entomologist ultimately, right? If she can kind of make it through this gauntlet of being known as the bug girl and not shy away from it and continue to lean into that love of bugs, that's your entomologist right there who could be, saving people and doing urban planning and all these type of things if she sticks with it. But you got to make it through that gauntlet, of the kids laughing at you. And, hey, you're great. Look at this. Hey, it's tough. When we talk about life beating people down and kind of beating the dreams out of you, I think that's a part of it, right? Because we all kind of know what we're into, but also having that courage to walk that walk and understand it may not be well received at times. Right? That doesn't mean it's wrong. That doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. This is just kind of the life of life, right? Like life is a challenge at times. Who knows why? But but I can tell you for sure that it is, right? And it's going to continue to be challenging. But yeah, in those situations, so I try to, kind of through my daughter, also telling her, like, you got to have the courage to kind of, whatever your passion is, to stay with it and lean into it and have faith in yourself. Because the discouragement, right, the deceit, the distractions, all that stuff is coming. Once again, doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. This is just the nature of life from what I've seen, right? My 41 years here, this is kind of what it is. I mean, you can do the best job ever, and trouble is still coming. Like, I don't know why. Once again, and Jim Rome says, we don't ask you to like it, but we do ask you to learn it, right? And that's kind of how I embrace it. Also, like, I don't necessarily like it that life is like the seasons and the disappointments are coming, without a doubt. But it has helped me out tremendously to understand that this is just what it is, right? I was coming back from Lagos maybe like 3 weeks ago, missed my flight. It was terrible. It was terrible. Had to buy another flight, right? It was horrible, right? But in the middle of it, thank you, God. Thank you for this opportunity to be here to solve these problems, right? I mean, because more are coming, even as I'm going through this, and I'm like, undoubtedly more problems are coming. So it's just kind of flipping their perspective on it and kind of, I need to get wiser, stronger, smarter to be able to solve these problems better. Because, yeah, life is just life, and I think being prepared for it can serve all of us greatly, in my opinion, just kind of accepting the realities of it. And for my children, I think that's big for me to prepare them for life too. Because when that stuff does come, I don't want to see them crumble. None of us want to see our kids crumble, So trying to find how is there anything I can do to prevent it? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't know. I mean, life still has to be life, but I definitely try to share those messages with my kids that, sometimes things are going to go bad. It's not your fault. You don't want to get into because that stuff slows you down, in my opinion, right? You're going to lose time with the whole why me and all this. Who knows, man? There's no answer to that question. Right? It's just kind of, you got to keep moving forward and not taking it as I'm doing something wrong or this is my fault. This is kind of just how things work. So yeah, I don't even know how I got into that.
Well,
But
no, so that speaks
yeah,
on a good point about gratitude, being grateful for whatever it is that happens in our life, and and gratitude was one of those four pillars. And I'm wondering, can you speak
hmm
on how you might incorporate gratitude into that life framework?
we have like exercises, that are associated with each kind of one of the pillars. And with the gratitude is once a week, just writing down 10 things or 10 people that you're grateful for. Right. We think that's a good exercise just to kind of get your mind in the habit of understanding that, there's a lot of folks who are helping me doing this, whatever it is that I'm doing. There's a lot of folks and things, right, that are helping me do whatever it is that I'm doing. So as far as application, that's always been, a good exercise. And then of course with your family members, right? Just saying thank you to them, having conversations with them, clarifying roles and goals. That's another big one, right? What is your role in this relationship? What is my role in this relationship? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish over the next couple years, next 4 years? Right? Just as family members, just in case I come across something that can help. Right. So with that gratitude piece, that's kind of what we advise in terms of applying that principle specifically.
Yeah, of course, having a gratitude journal is so easy to do. I something that I do every single day is I have a journal that I do, and at the end of the day, I write at least one thing that I was thankful for on that day. And
Yes.
it's so easy to do. It's so easy, but it's also so impactful in ways that you don't expect it to be. Because as I'm
hmm
going through this practice, I do it every single day. I've done it now for more than 2 years. If I am going through the day, I know consciously, subconsciously, maybe at the end of the day, I'm going to have to write something that I liked, something that I was thankful for on that day. So as I'm going through the day, I have a gratitude, a sense of gratitude, a sense of thankfulness as I'm going through the day, because I know that at the end of the day, I'm going to have to challenge myself to write something that I was thankful for on that day. And because of that, shifts my perspective into being grateful for whatever it is that happens, as opposed to the other side of the coin, as that would go.
Yeah. And that's big. That you kind of commanded your brain to look for reasons to be. That's huge, right? When you talk about just whatever we focus on is what we get. So if you're looking for things to be grateful for, yeah, that's yeah. And of course, you're going to find more and more every day. That we say you can either count the obstacles or you can count the opportunities. But whichever you choose to count will undoubtedly grow, right? That's just kind of how the mind works. If you're looking for obstacles, you're going to find a bunch of them. If you're looking for opportunities, same thing. You're going to find a bunch of them. So the mind is just fascinating how it works. But that is just great practice to kind of send your mind on that mission every day. Yeah, extremely helpful,
Yeah.
extremely helpful. And then I think the gratitude gives you good energy too. Like when you're grateful, you just have better energy walking out here in life, as opposed to the complaining. Yeah, we try to, it happens, but we just try to minimize it. I mean, we are humans in this society at 2024, so it's gonna be tough to not complain about something. That's how we're all wired, unfortunately. But it is something that we should actively work against. And like you said, that's great to put your mind on that gratitude mission.
Yeah.
That is critical, in my opinion.
Now, I'm as you are talking about your life framework, which I absolutely love, and I find that it's wonderful that it's related and linked to and founded on, based on the Bible, because that is so impactful. But my question is, other people may have issues trying to connect their faith or faith in general to personal development and self-discovery. And
Mhm.
how do these interactions, or so how do these elements interact, or in interact with your journey on as you are teaching that framework?
So for me, once again, I kind of look at everything as a tool. How can we use this? Uh, so for using the Bible, that kind of came back to, like you said, self-discovery as well, and that's why we kind of tried to extract those simple principles from it, and we don't want it to be too Bible heavy because we understand some folks may that may kind of make them kind of back off from it. We understand that part. So we try not to go kind of um, overly churchy, I guess. I don't know how to best describe it. But we do want to be honest about where the information came from, right? Like, and this Bible is a kind of another tool once again. And I think the big key to it was just simplifying things and trying to explain it in a way that folks could understand. But ultimately, yeah, it's just about trying to give folks the courage to discover who they are, right? When we talk about confidence, like the definition of confidence is self-assurance arising from a belief in one's qualities and abilities, right? So we think if you never identify your qualities and abilities, how could you ever be confident, right? So that's how we try to approach it from the beginning, is getting folks to identify what are those qualities, what are those abilities, right? That's why we have the multiple intelligence assessment, the interest profiler as well, just kind of getting folks to identify, evaluate who you are, right? You probably have gifts that you never even considered developing that could serve you greatly in this life if you choose to develop them. So we try to kind of keep that focus on, it's really about self-discovery, right? The Bible has been helpful in terms of giving us simple frameworks, and simple is important, right? Simple, even in the Bible, it talks about don't be confused by the simplicity that's in Christ, right? And we kind of approach it from the angle that things are a lot more simple than folks are letting on, right? Like, it is possible to kind of, drown out a lot of the noise and focus on just a couple key things, right? Just a couple key things in life. Um, yeah, so with that, we got those from the Bible. But yeah, once again, we try to keep it about self-discovery, so we're not leaning too much into the Bible, because yeah, and then when you get into the Bible space, people are very serious about about the Bible, whereas I'm more human than anything. And this has been a tool that's been helpful, so I'm trying to use it. I can't get too excited either way about the stuff. But it has been extremely helpful, and it really does come back to just self-discovery, kind of helping people to see how valuable they are, right? For whatever reason, like we said earlier, life kind of squashes some of those things out of you. But each of us has brilliance in us, right? Like, each of us is here for a reason with brilliant gifts that we can bring to bear. But once again, you got to make it through that gauntlet of life and have the courage to kind of show those things, the courage to develop those things, the discipline to develop them, right? The gratitude to develop them. So yeah, it really comes back to that self-discovery piece. So, if we have to steer clear of the Bible, we can just kind of lean into the self-discovery side of things. And those 4 principles are something that I believe everyone can understand and kind of relate to.
Well, and okay, so the interesting thing was you talked about if you look for obstacles, you're going to find obstacles. If you look for opportunities, you're going to find opportunities. And to use that same type of phrasing or idea, if somebody is looking for an opportunity to use the Bible to interpret that, to find better meaning for their life, then they're going to find people like you that are doing those things. But also, because that is kind of the message that you're sending out, you're going to be picking up and pulling in the people that are looking for those things, because I think that works on both ways. And the benefit to that
Correct.
is, like you said earlier, that we've read the Bible, we understand a bare just a little bit of what's going on, but how do we actually use that, interpret that, and use that in our own life and be meaningful for us as individual, for me, as somebody would say. So it seems like you have done that. You've went on that journey. You have parsed out the information that is applicable to create a life framework, and now you're sharing that information with others. And so that will hopefully maybe give them an opportunity to see that, and even perhaps double down and see what they can learn on their continued study in God's word, so that they can maybe parse out even more valuable information for themselves.
1,000%. That's the intention behind it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now,
and I was inspired by someone else who was doing the same thing.
Yeah. Now, in today's society, where challenges abound, Yeah, you emphasize the importance of creativity and self-esteem. Why are these qualities crucial, and how could they be nurtured?
I think they're crucial because they're kind of the core of your identity in terms of how could they be nurtured. Uh, we first, once again, would say identify what those qualities and abilities are. And then we also have activities to refine them, right? The person's going to have the discipline and the commitment to really want to refine these things. But we can definitely give activities to refine them. And we definitely have tools to help folks evaluate and identify what those qualities and abilities are. And I think that creativity is the key to each of our lives, right? Like that's what makes you you. That's really the value of you, your unique perspective, your unique view, your unique take on things. And then going back to like with the young people, that desire to just kind of drift and be a part of the crowd, that's always gonna be there, right? But also is the desire to just be uniquely who you are, right? And kind of balancing these two things. We all want to be a part of some group. We all want to be accepted, no doubt about it. But there's still a uniqueness to you, right? To the individual of it all. And that's just what we try to remind people, right? Even if you're twins raised in the same house, you're looking at things differently. That's just the reality of it. That's just the reality of the human. And we really try to get folks to lean into that because once again, that's a big part of your confidence, a big part of your self-image is understanding the value of you, right? Regardless of whether I'm here, there, this country, that country, understanding the usefulness and the value of me as a person, right? Understanding how I could be useful to whatever group I'm going to be in. And once again, bringing it back to that self-discovery piece and leaning into that creativity. God is a creator. We're creators, right? Everything that we see was created by our fellow humans, people just like us. There have been no aliens or robots that I'm aware of who can make tables and stuff. So, maybe it's possible, but just reminding ourselves that, man, people in our group or beings in our group have already done some incredible things, right? So those abilities are also within us. And just kind of reminding folks. I think that's the big one with so much overwhelming information and folks being told that, maybe you're not as valuable as you really are. We think it's important to just kind of give folks those reminders. And like you said, give them ways of how to do it, right? Here are some assessments you can take to kind of identify those things. Here are some activities you can do to kind of refine those things. And just trying to get folks to have kind of a healthier perspective on it. And then from there, their imagination, everything will take over. They just need to know where the resources are. And then from there, they get their own vision and then go on their path. But we do think it's important to remind everyone, each and every person, is that you do have brilliance within you. If you can tap into it, it can really serve you in life, right? Your unique perspective is yours. Just because some people may try to discourage it, once again, the gauntlet of life. You got to have the courage to walk through that thing and lean into your unique, whatever thought you have, it's there for a reason. The ideas were given to you, not to everybody. So, if they don't understand it or they don't believe in it, that should be expected, right? The expectation shouldn't be that people are going to agree with everything I say and everybody's going to love me. If that's the expectation, then you're going to be disappointed a lot. Right. So we talk about that as well, just clarifying your expectations. Just, have healthy expectations. That way you can be more satisfied than disappointment or disappointed. Right. The key to satisfaction or disappointment is your expectations. So that's another big one that we try to just remind people of. Once again, simple things, but the world has gotten so fast that I think we've kind of overlooked some of these kind of basics, just kind of slowing down and just reminding ourselves of some of those basic things.
Agreed. Now, Carter, I want to shift focus just a little bit here and talk about the Carter Hughes Knowledge Institute. Can you tell us more about the Institute's mission and how it aims to create a population of lifetime learners?
Yeah, yes, that is the goal. The intention behind it was, to help people be more confident and more productive. That's kind of like the basic intention behind every product that we'll ever create is to help people be more confident, help people be more productive. with CHKI, it's just three lanes that we operate in: self-improvement, right, career improvement, and then veterans benefits. Like I said, and that just comes from my experience in the veteran space and me wanting to continue, not wanting to give up helping veterans. Right, I want to continue to do it. I'm a veteran. My dad's a veteran. We got veterans in the family, and I always get asked questions and try to be helpful to people. So I'm like, man, let me just create some content to where people can just come and get it forever. But that's kind of the intention behind it. Those three lanes: self-discovery, self-development, career development, career improvement, and then veterans benefits resources. And then we have kind of content within those three lanes, once again, helping folks to be more productive and more confident. In the workforce lane, we talk about the American workforce trinity. Number one is just knowing your job well enough to explain it to a child. Number two is having a good relationship with all your coworkers. And then number three, the biggest one, is being willing and eager to speak publicly. That's a big one in the workforce. So we just try to remind people, if you can improve in these three areas, right, and in your job, you're going to continue to increase your value, which ultimately increases your compensation, right? Because if you're willing to lead the meeting, willing to speak up in the meeting, give the presentation, you're going to be an asset, right? And you have good relationship. You understand how you help your coworkers, understand how they help you, right? It's none of this stuff is personal. It's just, we're here on a team for a collective mission and just kind of approaching it from that angle. And then that technical knowledge piece, understand, do we provide a product or service? Who is the target audience, right? What are some characteristics of our audience? What are some processes that I could improve upon, right? We're also trying to tap into that creativity still as well. And just reminding people that even your career is an opportunity for you to do great things. For most of us, I know for me, the bulk of my life is going to be spent at work, right? Like the time, even to this point in my life, at 41, most of the time that I've been awake, I've been at work, right? Like that's just a reality for most people, that when we leave this place, the bulk of our time is going to be spent working. So just a reminder, hey, let's make the most of this thing, right? If you can, once again, have that courage to do a little more public speaking than you normally do, that can make a major difference in your career, right? If you have that courage to maybe take another training that you maybe wouldn't have, to try to get a different perspective on things from kind of a macro view, understanding you're operating, once again, in a $1 or $1 trillion industry. A lot of money's being made out here, right? So just kind of reminding folks to kind of step back and take a bigger view of things in terms of career, because there's a lot of opportunities. A lot of opportunities, and we don't see that slowing down anytime soon, especially with more people going into entrepreneurship and all that stuff. That's opportunity in the workforce, right? So the opportunities will be there, and we're just kind of reminding people, once again, simplifying things, 3 to 4 main things that we focus on, and that will tremendously increase your value. But yeah, so that's what the platform is for, just kind of giving tools, products to help people be more confident and more productive.
Well, so first I want to say thank you for your service and for your family as well. And I think those three pillars you talked about for the workforces are really interesting. And I kind of chuckled a little bit at the first two, especially because they seem so basic. They're so, like you were talking about earlier, they're so simple. Be able to understand your job well enough that you can explain it to a child. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Duh. Of course you should know that. But the problem is it's not always on the individual worker where that misconnection is. Sometimes it comes from higher up, the managers. They don't know what you're supposed to be doing, so you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. So that seems, again, it seems comical. Okay, duh, of course I'm supposed to be able to do that. But a lot of people, I'm sure, struggle with that because they don't know, because the person who hired them doesn't actually know. And so, and not only that, but because their daily responsibilities, I'm sure, shift lots of times every day. It's always different. I don't know what I do. It's always different. Okay, well, that's a problem, but it's not necessarily an individual problem always. Sometimes it is, not always. A lot of times that comes from higher up. And then, of course, the next piece of that is being able to have a good relationship with the people that you're working with. Again, that common sense. You shouldn't go to work and not be able to talk to the people that you're working with. Or you should be able to have an open conversation with them, be able to friendly exchange ideas, and maybe, hey, did you do anything this weekend? Did you watch any good movies? Or, hey, how are the kids doing? Have that that personal interaction, because then you are a human there in that job, fulfilling the role that hopefully you can explain to a child so they can understand. And because of that, you're not a robot only meant to do the work that you're supposed to, be a human so that you can
Bingo.
be a human to do the things. And of course, being able to speak about that in a public thing, whether that be on social media, you're up and you're advocating for your job on, in the meetings, or, whatever the societal opportunities are present themselves.
Hmm.
But that, I think, even more stems from the first one, being able to understand your jobs so that you can explain it to a child. I think that being
Yes.
able to understand your job so that you can explain to somebody else or teach a child how to do it is so important, and that comes with confidence. And that confidence, if you have the confidence in what you're doing, and you understand what it is that you're doing, then you're able to speak to others about what it is that you're doing, and
Hmm.
that is where that open line of communication, that public speaking
Hmm.
form comes from.
That's it. Yes. Yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah. It kind of starts with tapping into that creativity and then stepping back. Yes. 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 And being able to see it, the opportunity that's there. Yes. 1,000%.
Very good. Now let's talk about your upcoming book, which is "I Have the Power to Change Things." What can readers expect to discover within the pages, and how does it tie into the framework that we discussed earlier today?
Well, all the products kind of are operating off that kind of that main framework of courage, discipline, accountability, gratitude, and with I have the power to change things. It's just we want this to be concepts that you may have seen before, may have heard about, but maybe not from this angle, right? Try to give folks a fresh perspective on some things. The career piece will be in there, the self improvement piece. Nothing about veteran benefits in this one, but more so about career improvement and self improvement. Things like the four wheels of drive and ambition, right? And four wheels like a car, right? But it's more about willingness, though. It's about, four wheel, WILL, willingness to learn, willingness to try, willingness to care, right? That's a big one. Caring about your job, right? You chose this job, you signed up for it. Let's not get too cool for school, huh? Right? Like, come on, let's act like we care about this place you're going to spend a bunch of your time at, and then being willing to stay until you get it right, right? Just kind of, and we call those once again the four wheels of drive and ambition. So once again, simple reminders, right? And we've heard these things before, but we try to put it in a compact way that you can remember. Maybe even it rhymes a little bit or something, but something it'll stick with you, right? Like a billboard, right? Like things that'll stick with a person and really kind of when they're ready to give up, maybe okay, oh man, maybe I should be willing to kind of stay until I get it right. Maybe that reminder will help them, stick it out. Or maybe I don't want to. Maybe I should be willing to learn this. Maybe I should be willing to try this, right? Like and once again, that's kind of where the adventure of life really starts with us learning new things and trying new things. That's the adventure of it all. So a lot of this is just about reminding people to embrace the adventure of life, right? It's supposed to be exciting, it's supposed to be fast paced at times, and just trying to get folks to tap back into that their unique creativity because we really think that's the key to it all. And once again, that rests right on top of the confidence, the self-esteem, all that kind of stuff is that individual to really value their unique creativity, right? If we can accomplish that, then the job here is done. But that's the intention behind this book, just kind of to remind people that you do indeed have the power to change it all, right? Everything in your life can change for you because you can change. It's that simple, right? When you change, that's when everything changes. So that's what we mean. And for me, at that time of embarrassment, I'm 35, right? Living with my parents. Thank God for my parents also to put up with me for an extended period of time. Gift and a curse probably as well. But it was at that point of embarrassment, I had to embrace, that it's my fault, right? Like this isn't, ain't nobody else who did it. It wasn't, oh man, this guy should have did this or this girl should have did. No, no, no. That's the first part I had to embrace, that it was my fault. These things that were happening to me were because of my action, right? I was reaping this stuff because I sowed these seeds, right? Like that was the first reality of it that I had to embrace. And once I got comfortable with it being my fault, that also means I have the power to change it, right? So I have the power to change it is the second part of that. But it really started with that accountability piece. I had a major role in this, right? I may not want to admit it, huh? I may get a little shy when I'm asked about what my role was, but I had a major role in it. And I had to kind of embrace that first and foremost. And then on the other side of that was I have the power to change it. And that's what happened. I changed it. I changed myself, and literally everything changed. Like it was fascinating, and it was just words. Being lucky to bump into the right words, right? Zig, it was Zig for me. But from there, that starts you on the journey to where Les Brown, Jim Rohn, Earl Nightingale, Bob Proctor, all these kind of guys that kind of served as guardrails in my mind, as like structures in my mind as far as what's important, what's not important, what I'm going to do, what I'm not going to do. And they really helped me to establish that structure, which is probably why I'm trying to do the framework stuff now, to give other people a structure that they can operate within. Because, man, this has been tremendous for my life, for my family, for my children. And, man, it's been incredible. I can't lie. It's been incredible. And it all started with words, right? The beauty of words that can compel. So they say words arranged in the proper sequence. You can make anyone do anything. You can convince anyone to do anything with the proper sequence of words. And that's just so fascinating. And I'm grateful that I found some good words that led me to a good place. I don't think I've ever been as helpful as I am right now, as far as, helping other people. The last year, I probably learned more than I've learned in my whole life. Like I haven't been this productive ever. And it's all just kind of rooted in, tapping into my creativity, learning, and then seeing what comes from that, right? Like, who knows, right? If I'm willing to learn it and try it, who knows what comes from it? So yeah, that was that. The second part is I have the power to change things. Yeah, taking that accountability and then realizing I have the power to change things, as we each do.
Agreed. Now, Carter, before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or key takeaways you'd like to share with our audience?
I would say those two things, right? The two things that I would leave you with is define who you are and decide where you're going. Right? That's really the power of it all. Just deciding who you want to be in this life, what do you want to have in this life, and that's the beginning. That's the beginning of it all. So I would always remind people that decide who you are, or define who you are, and then decide where you're going. Those are two major keys to life. And then, on the website, on the YouTube channel as well, we have tools, products for you to inspire you, to remind you. Coming out with the guidebooks as well. I'm still getting ideas of different ways to kind of, once again, help people be more confident and more productive. So the ideas will continue to come. I'll continue to try to create new things, different things to kind of help folks. For the youth as well, we got some products for the youth as well, and then for adults also, and then I'll always be in the veteran space as well. So I would say check out the site, check out the YouTube channel, and see if you can get something that can help you in one of those locations. But yes, and I appreciate all the support that we've been getting so far as well. Thank you guys for having me on. This conversation has been great, man. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this. So thank you guys for this.
All right. Well, that's a wrap for the episode of the Pursue This Initiative. Remember, you have the power to design your life with purpose. Join us next time for even more inspiring conversations.